Good afternoon, everyone. You are listening to My Conscious Dad right here in your hometown station, KHTS. I'm your host, Jazmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. And today we are going to be talking about why kids need a present father in their life.
You look annoyed. And is my mic on? All right. You look annoyed. Why are you annoyed?
I'm not annoyed.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about why kids, especially, little boys, need a father that's really present and able to help build up the character of that child. And the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of times in the training rooms when I work with teens, I can see the devastation of some of the kids that come in those trainings, whether it's, working with relationships or not being taught certain things or not being built up. You can see the dysfunction in a lot of the kids, and a lot of that has to do with, the parents not being, present, or them not having a father. And I just think that having a father in your life has a certain symbol in it, and it creates some kind of a backbone and a structure. And I think it really uplifts you to have knowing that someone's in your life there to support you through thick and thin, no matter what. And so if you have a father that's not present, that can also be damaging as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're missing either parent in your life, it'll always feel like something's missing, and each parent contributes something different, especially as a male and a female role model, so for boys and girls. So I don't necessarily think it's just just fathers. I know that this is specific to our show today, but I think that there's a stigma that when a father's missing, the mom has to kind of step up and do all the mother tasks and the father task. And you always say that a lot of single moms, they forget about their feminine role in motherhood, and they try to be strong and play the father role a lot. So I also think it's really important to point out that when mothers are missing from those situations, they are then lacking, those kids are lacking that motherly, nurturing role that only, I don't want to say only a woman can provide, but naturally a woman provides, I want to say probably better or easily
More effective,
or
yeah.
more effortlessly, or whatever that looks like, in a way that a child needs when growing up. So I just wanted to point out that it's not just a father, it's both. But again, I know that father is what we're talking about specific today.
Yeah, and I agree. It is imperative to have both mom and dad, in the family home, and to really also be present and in the moment and nurturing their kids and building them up. But I wanted today to really kind of highlight the father being missing in the family and how devastating that can be, and the consequences that the kids, could pay some of the prices that they do when dad's not around. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And maybe for you as a young person, you can kind of reflect maybe on some of your own friends or your own relatives, that don't have fathers. How do you think it plays a part on some of the kids that don't have a father, whether he's there? Because you can be a father and be there, but not really be there, like not be present and in the moment, and just be checked out. So what do you think some of the prices that kids are paying for not having a father in their life?
Well, definitely the first thing that pops out to me with my friends or family who are missing that father figure in their life is find that there's a lot more dysfunction going on between not just them, but a lot of dysfunction going on between their family and their outside family relationships. So, for example, as a friend, one of my friends not having a father in their life affects our friendship, believe it or not. It affects the way that we communicate with each other. It affects the way, I have a friend that she won't even come to our house anymore because she's like, I can't believe how your family is. Like, she gets sad leaving our house because her family's not like that. And our family isn't a certain way other than we have mom, dad, brother, sister at home all the time, So, and I didn't realize that little things like seeing other people interact with their families, and then obviously they're going to compare to their family and say, oh, well, we don't do that at dinner. My dad eats on the couch, or my dad doesn't even come home for dinner. He's always at work. So I never realized that the things that I'm doing and in my life, and just by simply inviting her over, are affecting her and as she would say, depressing her. They're freaking her out that this is what she thinks families are supposed to look like. So
yeah, I didn't realize that either. That if you have friends that come over, they're and I have to take myself back to when I was a little kid, when I used to go over to my friend's house or neighborhood friends. You're like a little sponge. You're just watching and observing how other families interact with each other, and then you're going home and you're kind of measuring and trying to figure out, how come my family doesn't interact or communicate like this, or how come their family goes to dinner or sits down to dinner or doesn't sit down to dinner, and we're always trying to compare. So I never realized that that's probably what was going on. But I think that if I think about some of the kids that really struggle in their life, and they've either outwardly shared that because they don't have a dad, they've been affected in a certain way. I would think that a lot of it has to do with not believing that they matter, or not believing that they're important, or that they have a certain role. I think that, as little kids, we are trying to figure out for ourselves who we are and how important we are to the world, or do we matter? We need to be validated. We need to be heard. We need to be recognized as a force to be reckoned with in this world, and identifying what my gift is and my value and what I have to offer the world and contribute. And the only way we can see that is through the eyes of the people that are in our lives, and that's our mother and our father. And so if I'm a young boy and I'm in a household, with my mom and my grandmother and my aunts, and I don't have a father figure, I don't have somebody to be that role model for. I don't have anyone to model to me how I should be interacting, or how I should look at myself, or how I should be especially treating other women. So if I have a father in the home and he's being very respectful and courteous and gentle and tender, and I'm watching him being affectionate with my mom, what he's doing by modeling is he's teaching me how to treat a woman. And if I don't have that, then I have to just rest on whatever it is that are influences in my life that helps, kind of mold my perception about women and how to treat them, especially if I'm, listening to, pop culture or reality shows, and I'm watching people, be dysfunctional, and that's what's teaching me how to treat women. Then obviously those are my teachers.
yeah, and another thing is, I think when young boys are watching their dads, and their dads have that macho-y kind of, this is a woman's role and this is a man's role. I've seen people, dads and people in the community who will say certain things about gender roles that I can't even believe sometimes. So it makes me, wonder but it makes me wonder what it looks like inside their home, to see if a dad really genuinely and strongly believes that their son should not be vulnerable and their son shouldn't cry because that's girly, or that's a woman's job, or whatever they say. It kind of is sad. It saddens me to know that one day that young man's going to fall in love with someone, and that someone is going to be pulling and trying to draw out this vulnerable side of them so much that they'll either for the rest of their lives just keep trying, keep hoping, or they'll leave and say, I need someone who shows love in a vulnerable side, or so I don't think parents or dads in this scenario realize how these gender roles, or I don't want to say sexism, but it's a little bit sexist to say some of the things that men say that come along with being macho and being a man. And so they don't realize that little thing that they taught their kid their whole life is going to affect them in such a big way, not just with their relationships, but in work and how people see them in the community.
Yeah, for me, I kind of grew up with a father and, uncles. And it it wasn't so much directly that I was told, that I can't show my feelings, or, I guess in subtle ways it was, why are you crying? Or I'll give you something to cry about, was how I grew up, or, toughen up, or, stop being a sissy. And, those little things like that, you don't realize they shape and mold the belief systems that we have as little kids. And then we wonder why in our relationships we're suffering because we can't connect with the people that we say we love the most. And a lot of those beliefs when we're growing up are the walls that limit us from being vulnerable and being connected and allowing our wall to come down and let that person in, because we have these walls up. We have this ego. We have this persona that we have to be strong, right? That's the be strong, toughen up is what we're told, especially as little boys. And then we forget that we do have a soft side. And so for me, I was fortunate enough to have that wake-up call at 23 years old where I'm in a training room and I got some blunt feedback from people saying, you're this I'll never forget this moment. I was in a training room and I had this feedback circle. It was like an arc. And I had just met these people a couple days ago, and I didn't know them from Adam, but they were standing there and they were giving me this feedback of how I was showing up to them within a 24-hour period. And I'll never forget this little old lady. She reminded me of my grandma. She stood in front of my face and she goes, "I don't trust you. You scare me." And my spirit just broke, and I broke down in tears, and it hurt me. It was heartbreaking to see what I visualized, my grandma coming to me telling me, "I don't trust you, that I scare you." And so that really kind of opened my eyes to think that, maybe there's a part of me that I put this persona up to protect myself, or, from having a mustache to the clothes I wear to the way I walk, a certain demeanor, a certain standoffish presence, and not allowing myself to really be vulnerable and open and playful and inviting, all those different ways of being that would let somebody look at you and go, "Oh, he's a puppy dog." But at first impression, because I'm not allowing myself to be vulnerable, people make up these assumptions that I'm not approachable, that I'm not loving, I'm not gentle, I'm not kind. And so that was really a big wake-up call for me. And that's when I decided from this point forward, I want to start working on myself to learn how to project myself in the world so that more people trust me and so more people open up to me, especially as a life coach. And in that profession, I had to really, and I continually am challenged with learning how to be more vulnerable, more sensitive, more inviting to people, because I got to get people to trust me, and all those different ways of beings get people to trust you to open up and share.
Yeah, and I think I like how you said you were talking a lot about being connected. And I think for me, at least, when somebody's willing to be vulnerable with me, like you said, there's a certain level of trust there. And if you're not willing to be vulnerable, not just with me, but in your life, when you walk into a room, they can just tell. Sometimes they don't know that that's the feeling that they're feeling.
It's like an energy, right? Yeah, that someone's putting off.
So if you can just come off that way, be that way, and walk around and someone feel like they can trust you, that's what being vulnerable is, And so if you're kind of wondering, well, what does that look like, and how am I not coming off vulnerable? Or it's really comes down to to people that don't know you trust you. It's because of your energy and the way that you are, and it takes a lot of practice. But going back to what you said about being connected, I think that when people are willing to be vulnerable, I can connect with them on a deeper level, where it's not just, someone that I work with or someone that I play golf with or whatever that looks like. People can tell when you're being real. They can tell when you're being genuine and you're being authentic, and they can tell based on that connection. And then another thing I wanted to touch up on was I think I can see now through this conversation, I can see now why millennials bump heads so much with either authority figures or people older than them, is because young men right now and boys growing up, they're not, I don't want to say tough, but they're not in that tough love kind of environment anymore.
Yeah.
They're used to being, they're used to being loved. They're used to being told that they're great. They're used to getting participation awards.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what makes
But that's only because the Generation X had it really tough growing up with their baby boomer parents. Baby boomer parents was, the old school, do it because I said so. And, they didn't really show their emotions. And I'm talking in a masses, in a general population. Obviously, there's some families that did have tender fathers and loving families, an emotional kind of, intelligence. But for the most part, baby boomers, they were tough, strong people, and they didn't show their emotions very easy. So Generation X parents, when they were kids, they were like, you know what, when I'm a mom or when I'm a dad, I'm going to I'm going to shower my kids with affection and I'm going to praise them. So Generation X, they did the opposite. I think they overcompensated. They told their kids, they over kind of glorified them and told them that they can create anything they want, and to the point where now kids, the millennials, they now think that anything's possible, but without any work. They think that they can do anything and create and be the CEO overnight, rather than you can get there and everything is possible, but you got to be willing to put in the work. So there's, I think, some mixed messages there that the millennials got one piece of the information, like the front end, but they didn't get the back end. Like they didn't get okay, in order to create that, I got to put some work in and pay some dues and sacrifice as well.
Yeah, and what I think is funny is that a lot of the baby boomers, they spend an awful lot of time complaining about the millennials, and if only they knew that there are some things that us millennials really admire about them. We really admire their hard work and their dedication and all the advice that they have to give. However, I don't think that the baby boomers are really spending very much time looking into what millennials have to offer. They spend a lot of time, putting them down, saying, no, not anything is possible. You need to be realistic. And instead of, yes, you're right, anything is possible, but with hard work. So there's a cool mix that, like you said, Generation X brings to the table. And it's very clear to me now, though, why I can see how millennials don't really, in the workplace, don't really fit in with the baby boomers.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. So on the topic of kids needing fathers that are present and in the moment and noticing things about their kids, from the girl's perspective, why is it important to have a father that's present rather than having a father that's either not there physically or not present emotionally and spiritually and mentally?
Well, I think it's important to know what you're looking for when you grow up. I think as you start getting older and you start interacting with other kids and boys and you grow up with them, and if you have nothing, I mean, I hate to say this, boys, but we're constantly comparing you to
we?
Us as girls.
Okay.
Us girls are constantly comparing boys to the men in our life. So I'm constantly comparing boys to you and my brother, because those are the men in my past. Now, when they get older and they don't have a dad or a brother to compare them to, all they're doing is comparing them to their past relationships. And if their past relationships are abusive or, in any way, any type of emotional or physical abuse or really anything that's not healthy, they're just comparing it to those relationships. So if they do finally feel like they're in a good relationship, it's only in a good relationship compared to the relationships that they can compare they've had with men before.
Right. And so what do you think that is the main drawback to not having a present father as a young girl growing up, like someone that's checked out? Like I'm trying to imagine, and I'm sure there's a lot of times that I, even as much as I'm practicing being conscious and aware and trying to find living in the moment and looking for times that you guys need me versus trying to figure out when you need me, don't say anything. There's got to be a lot of times that I'm not present, I'm checked out, or I'm focused on business or worrying about bills or worrying about other things that I can't control that is really nonsense. But when I am checked out, or when little girls have fathers that are checked out, what are they yearning for? What are they missing? What does that feel like?
I think because even if you're there or not, either way, your energy is being focused on something that's not us. So it kind of feels like, okay, how can I be as important as that thing? So for example, for me growing up, you weren't there for a lot of stuff because you were out in the world trying to figure out who you are. And you missed out on a lot of stuff that we did. So I think you kind of start to wonder, like, oh, well, how can I be as important as that thing to him?
So if it's work, or maybe it's another kid, maybe you're really focused on your son, but you're not really that focused on your daughter because you think, oh, my wife has a relationship with her, she can figure it out, kind of thing. Your kids, your daughters are making up, why am I not as important as that job? Why am I not as important as my brother? Why am I not as important? So I think you have to realize that if you don't have an answer, if you're not showing your love, or that you're paying attention, we're making up whatever makes sense to us in our little brains, our little 6-year-old brains. So most of the time, I think, at least personally for me, it's why am I not as important as that?
Whatever their focus is.
Yeah.
Whatever they spend a lot of their time and their energy.
So even if you're a father that is not really even physically there, maybe you only see them once every couple of years or months, they're still thinking, what's dad doing out in the world that's so important that he can't spend that time with me? Or maybe you moved on and, you started a new family, and you're really trying to balance both. It doesn't matter how hard you try if you're not there, if they can't physically see you. Sometimes even phone calls aren't enough. You have to show up. You have to show up to those things, because we will always find something to justify why your thing is more important.
Yeah, great point. And I got some great goodies and golden nuggets to respond and to kind of open up these possibilities, but we'll get back to them right after the break.
Okay, stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS.